Voting is a civic duty. Let's register on the electoral list. This is a message from Equinoxe Television.
Hi sir, to all of you faithful viewers of Equinoxe Television, 6 p.m. in Douala. It's time for the news. Thank you so much for being with us. Our major stories tonight. It was excitement and joy at the Baptist Hospital in Yaoundé today after a 3-day-old baby who was stolen from the maternity of that hospital facility was finally found in Kouabang still in the central region. The baby was discovered safe and sound in the hands of some unknown persons. We will be tracing for you how the baby was stolen until when she was found 4 days later. And the cases of HIV and AIDS infection continue to increase in Cameroon. According to the Committee for the Fight Against HIV and AIDS, most of those affected and infected are youths between the ages of 14 to 25. Viewers, those are our major stories. Details when we come back. Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for the confidence. We just told you in the headlines that it was total joy and excitement at the Baptist Hospital in Ekumdum in the central region in Yaoundé after the 3-day-old baby who was stolen was finally found that was in Kouabang, still in the city of Yaoundé. And now Malak Glory tells us the excitement or the atmosphere at the Baptist Hospital today after that baby was found.
Total celebration at the Ekumdum Baptist Hospital in Yaoundé after the 3-day-old missing baby was found. The little baby who went missing 2 days ago was found at Kouabang, a locality in Mefu Afamba division. The baby was discovered in a health unit in the neighborhood when a young woman brought the child to the hospital for a checkup. Given that the baby developed high temperature throughout the night, the nurse reportedly discovered inconsistency with the suspect, and following the information that has been circulating on social media, the nurse then alerted the hospital hierarchy, who in turn contacted the family through administrative and security officials. The couple, family members and the inhabitants of Ekumdum all expressed joy through dancing and singing after seeing the baby. This comes 2 days after Justel Manfu lost her baby just 3 days after delivery at the Ekumdum Baptist Hospital in an unclear circumstances. She accused the health personnel of the hospital for conspiring with a suspected thief to deprive her of the joy of motherhood. Today, the hospital has been vindicated and the young couple are happy again.
Good news indeed. Over 1,000 Cameroonians are reported to have benefited from the universal health coverage. Speaking to the press, the Minister of Public Health assured the public that the scheme has as objective to come to the assistance of the vulnerable population, including pregnant women, children below the age of 5, kidney patients, and a group of others. Immaculate Fogui completes the story for us.
Access to health care remains a major challenge for many Cameroonians. This is because over 55% of Cameroonians live below the poverty line, of which 37.7% of the population are extremely impoverished. In order to ensure access to healthcare services at affordable rates, the universal health coverage was launched.
Gentlemen, as part of its vision on an emerging country where everyone is in good health, Cameroon is committed to improving access to healthcare and services for all.
The program marks a critical step in helping the vulnerable population as it targets pregnant women, persons living with HIV and AIDS, kidney patients, persons suffering with tuberculosis, and children aged between 0 to 5 years old.
Universal health coverage is seen as an obvious way to ensuring equitable access to healthcare and services, protection against financial risks for users, and the availability of quality services in health facilities. Conscious of this situation, the head of state, His Excellency Paul Biya, and his government has taken the bet of progressively implementing the universal health coverage for the benefit of the populations against the backdrops of the need to do well with the resources available.
According to the Ministry of Public Health, since the launching of the first phase, at least 642,090 children between 0 to 5 years of age have benefited from free malaria treatment. Meantime, at least 346,395 pregnant women have benefited from free prenatal care. Despite the statistics given out by the Ministry of Public Health, some observers think the universal health coverage is far from being a reality, as many Cameroonians are yet to benefit from the scheme.
And on to this other human interest story, a 30-year-old woman who operated a mobile money kiosk in Bonamusadi has been brutally stabbed to death in Bonamusadi here in the Douala 5 area. Investigations have been opened. Miriam was returning from her workplace when she was ambushed by some unknown individuals. Our reporter Lucy Dengu Esia was at a family residence in Bonaberry, and she now tells us that they are in such a pain.
Crying and dismay filled the family residence of Miriam Carol, nicknamed Colombo. The 30-year-old woman was brutally killed last Thursday while she was returning from work.
That evening, at about 12 midnight, when I was informed, I rushed to the site. I met my elder sister lying in her own pool of blood.
Miriam worked at a mobile money transaction kiosk in Bonamusadi in the Douala 5 subdivision. First-hand information revealed she was stabbed severally and wounds inflicted on her shoulder. Her family members, who cry out for justice to take its course, say no reason can justify such wickedness.
I never imagined a day will come when our sister will leave us in such a tragic manner. I even lack words to describe what they did to her.
La douleur était indescriptible.
The deceased colleagues in distress have memories of her as a hardworking and sociable young woman.
C'est vrai que cette journée, Carole avait l'air fatiguée.
It is true that on that day, Carole had a tired face. She wasn't jovial like in ordinary days, where she usually cracked jokes with everyone and also sang. It's a friend who called me saying, "Have you heard Carole was attacked and killed?" I said no. Carole sent her last report at 10:05 p.m. Carole had nothing on her, just her phone and purse.
Elle n'avait pas d'argent sur elle.
Miriam was attacked at her business place around 10:30 p.m. on Thursday, a time of the night considered late by her colleagues and those involved in the electronic transaction business. She closed late on that day, and her attackers seized the opportunity. In her field, we are consistently victims of attacks. Insecurity in Bonamusadi and other parts in Douala have gained steam. The population call on powers that be to reinforce security. Meantime, investigations have been launched.
Like I said, investigations have been opened. Hopefully, they bear some fruits this time around. We now talk something else. In the southwest region, despite being one of the most important agricultural basins in Cameroon, agricultural production and productivity remains far below expectations in the Nzian division of the southwest region of the country. Farmers and local public officials in charge of agricultural activities blame the situation on neglect on the part of the government of Cameroon while identifying other environmental difficulties to production. Let's now have more with for me, I'm John Sander.
The Nzian division, with a vast arable land, is an important agricultural basin in Cameroon, characterized by a rich soil fertility and a favorable climate. However, the agricultural productivity of the Indian and the production capacity of farmers in the division have been perturbed within the last years by a host of challenges. Some include the lack of modern farming tools, the inability to acquire modern farm inputs, the state of farm-to-market route, the security crisis in the Anglophone regions, and limited government agricultural initiatives in the division.
Farmers have made their solemn promise that they are going to fight food insufficiency in the division, especially after the crisis. You know, most of the farmers abandoned their farms because of the socio-political crisis.
These preoccupying factors were outlined at the launch of the Indian Divisional Farming and Cropping Season in Mundemba, grouping some 33 common initiative groups, 7 cooperatives, and 11 large-scale farmers from all the 9 subdivisions of the Indian.
And now, what we have given them as farm input is going to encourage them to go back. They have to go back, especially now that cocoa prices have increased, especially now the head of state is talking about the import substitution trade policy.
Even with limited response from the government, the farmers went home boosted by the farm input and tools placed at their disposal.
So we are going to work harder in order to eliminate poverty and perhaps food shortage in Mundemba. We are very grateful for the patronage of the Prime Minister for the work that the Divisional Delegate of Agriculture and Rural Development has given us. We have items here which are going to spur us to work harder.
The farmers used the opportunity to plead for more attention and consideration from the government of Cameroon. The event at the Mundemba Council Hall was presided out by the second Assistant Senior Divisional Officer for the Indian Division, Mr. Shea Roland.
And that was what we could put together for you. Let's now move over to Talking Point. Welcome back, viewers. Our guest tonight is Mr. Dr. Alphonse Fo. He is of the Civil Society and also the coordinator of Street Child UK. Is based here in Cameroon. Thank you so much, Doctor, for accepting to be our guest on the news tonight on Equinoxe Television. Now, we just watched the news a while ago. A 3-day-old baby who was stolen in Yaoundé and later found today still in Yaoundé. Precisely at Nkwabang. As someone interested and working for the protection of the child or children, what do you make of that, or what do you have to say?
First of all, thanks indeed for having me on your program this evening. It is about an issue of child protection in Cameroon. It's about ensuring that an environment is safe for every child because it's their right to be safe. This is simply a situation of revamping of the situation of children in Cameroon in terms of the protective mechanisms which exist in the hospitals and in the different communities. Because if those systems were in place and running properly, I'm not too sure that child would have been stolen from that hospital and eventually found their way far down in the south region of Cameroon. I believe we need to go back to the drawing board to carry out a retrospective view of what our mechanisms in place are, how protective they are of the children in Cameroon, so that we avoid such situations from reoccurring.
And now, Dr. Alphonse, how can we explain the recurrence of baby thefts at some hospital facilities in our country?
In a world that is in a constant state of mutation sometimes in the right direction and on other occasions in the wrong direction, there are women who are facing issues and who do not want to use the right track in order to be able to have access to children. They could do adoption, they could go for artificial insemination and other things like that. So this is simply supposed to be the work of people who do not want to do things right. We can also bring up the issue of people wanting to use children they've stolen for ulterior motives, child slaves, ritual activities and all of that. But since we don't know the motive of the people who stole this child, we can only say that there is the need for the strengthening of protective mechanisms around such environments where children are found.
And now let's talk about street child. When we listen, when we hear you talk about street child, what do we mean? Are they just children who are littered in the streets? When we talk about street child, can you explain to us more on that?
First of all, you need to understand that it is a fundamental right of children to be protected. It is also their right to be in school. It is their right to be within a family setting. It is their right to be taken care of appropriately, especially at that tender age. When we say street children, we do not literally mean children hanging around in the streets. We're talking about children who have dropped out of school. We're talking about children who are unaccompanied and separated from their parents and caregivers. We're talking about children who do not have the opportunity to have the kind of care, protection that every normal child would have in any normal country. So street children could be children who live in houses, but who do not have the opportunity to live the kind of normal lives that children would normally live. So in this case, it means the spectrum is really, really large. We're talking about IDP children. We're talking about children who are hanging around at Post Central in Yaoundé. We're talking about children who are staying with aunts and uncles who are molesting them. We're talking about children who are into child marriage. We're talking about children who are into labor, forced labor, child labor. We're talking about children who are into all activities that could be nefarious to their well-being as children, especially at that tender age.
And now let's try to narrow it down somehow. It's summer holidays and it's commonplace in Cameroon to find underage children hawking foodstuffs, and that is punishable by the law. Your organ seeks to ensure that such activities are better canalized. Tell us what you do and how it's done practically on the field.
From an organizational standpoint, we believe that every child has a right to be safe in school and learning. Learning simply means acquiring numeracy and literacy skills, which would constitute a foundation for that child to become a responsible citizen, a responsible father, a responsible mother, and the list can go on and on. The fact that some of these children find themselves in such environments, sometimes for many reasons, sometimes economic reasons, sometimes for social reasons, does not really justify their presence there. Children are normally supposed to be in school, learning, acquiring skills that could allow them to become people who would be useful to the society. When they find themselves in the streets, they would be exposed to crime, drugs, prostitution, and other negative vices that we find in our society today. So as we work, we ensure that these children are taken from those places back into school so that they can eventually become normal citizens as they progress in their lives.
Now, Douala is a cosmopolitan city. We have children coming from all over Cameroon, especially from conflict areas like the northwest, the southwest, the north, and even the east region of Cameroon. Now, what concrete moves do you people make to take these children off the street? Because most of them seem to be homeless.
I want to start by saying that street child cannot on its own take away all of these children from the streets. That is why there is a need for concerted action between and amongst actors of the civil society, local and international alike, in conjunction with specialized agencies of the government and ministries and all we have on the ground. As a structure that works with children, we've been able to send about 7,500 children to school. The academic year just ended. And we've succeeded in keeping 6,500 more in school. It is one thing to take children to school. It is yet another to ensure that they stay in school. In Douala alone, in the academic year just ended, we had a series of activities in Bonaberi which plays host to thousands of IDP children who were able to take them back into school, bought scholastic materials, uniforms, school shoes, and even paid their PTA levies. We intend to do more this year by looking at other parts of Douala which play host to these children who have lost the opportunity to acquire quality education as per their rights. So we will continue to work in this domain, and of course not limiting our work to Douala, but also taking into consideration the other towns which play host to children affected by crisis. We're talking about Bafoussam, we're talking about Boya, we're talking about Yaoundé, we're talking about Kribi, we're talking about Magba, as well as many other towns in Cameroon which play host to a huge number of children running away from crisis. It could be the Anglophone crisis, the Boko Haram crisis in the far north, and of course the refugee crisis in the eastern part of the country.
And now, as someone who has been with Street Child UK for some time now and advocating for the protection of children, what do you think can be a way forward taking these children away from the streets?
We are very practical when we do our work. We try to carry out some sort of a systemic analysis of why the children are in the streets. If you go and talk to those children, they will tell you They are in the streets because they've lost their parents. They are in the streets because some of them have not been able to be treated well by their caregivers and their relatives. Some of them are there in the streets because their parents do not see the importance of sending them to school. So there's really a mixed bag of reasons why those children are in the streets. But we cannot do that as an individual structure that works in that domain. That is why, in order to solve the problem, all civil society organizations which work in that domain must come together and address the root causes of those children being in those streets so that they can have their problem solved and things can fall back to normal progressively.
Maybe I ask the question in other words, Doctor, what moves should be taken by all the parties concerned, that is the government, the civil society, and others, to reduce the phenomenon of stranded kids from streets in our major cities in Cameroon?
There must be a coordinated effort by government institutions, the Ministry of Social Affairs, the Ministry of Women's Empowerment and the Family, the security services. Hospital administrations must work hand in glove to ensure that there are rules, there are procedures in place to ensure that nobody has access to a child which is not theirs. And in case this happens, they should be seen to punish the people who are the perpetrators of this. Because this is one aspect we do not see much. A child was stolen, the child has been found. We do not really hear much about what eventually happened to the person who stole that child. So there must be these mechanisms in place to ensure that there is deterrent measures so that people don't do this. And at the same time, government structures must work in collaboration with the hospitals to ensure that this does not happen and that progressively we can reduce the rate at which children are being stolen from our hospital facilities in Cameroon.
Yes, you just mentioned deterrent measures there, still on hospitals and baby theft. What should be done? Should security be tightened, especially at maternities?
At the level of the hospitals, a hospital is a very sensitive environment. First and foremost, people find themselves in hospital facilities because there's something that is not right with their health. And as such, hospital administrations must put in place checks, security measures, such that people do not easily walk into maybe a maternity ward and easily walk out without being identified and without them being questioned why they are there and whether or not they are supposed to be there. So this is something that is more or less around this stick policy to ensure that people do not access hospital environments, especially where children are found, without prior authorization. And when they are found, if they cannot explain themselves, there should be punitive measures in place, and such punitive measures should be made public so that they can act as a deterrent to any other persons who may be thinking of committing similar acts.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alphonse. Just to mention again that your activities are more focused on the protection of the child, especially the child in the streets. Now, any last words before we part company, Doctor?
I want to say very quickly that we are passionate about children going to school. We are passionate about children being protected. We are passionate about adolescent girls, school dropout, teenage mothers acquiring technical vocational education and training skills which could avail them of the opportunity to set up businesses, establish livelihoods, and live as normal citizens and eventually be useful to the country, to Africa, and the world at large. Thanks indeed for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Alphonse, for accepting to talk to us on Talking Points tonight on Equinoxe Television. Hope to have you some other time. Viewers, we thank you so much for always being with us on the news. Don't go away, our programs continue. Equinoxe World live from Yaoundé. As from 7 p.m. and the news in the French language comes up at 8 p.m. Stay with us on Equinoxe Television. Bye-bye for now.